Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 297 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Rana. The show notes are located at my site, ContinueFit.com. It's also where you can find out more about my book, Be Like the Best, and the Be Like the Best workbook. Great time of year to get it with the new year coming, guys. I'm telling you, there's a lot of great stuff in this book. It's 50 interviews with top fitness pros, and after each interview is a Be Like, which is just an action step or a challenge that will help you be like the best. Check it out at BeLikeTheBest.com, ContinueFit.com, or on Amazon. All right, on the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about what's happening at MBSC with the current changes. All right, I know I do talk with him a lot about this, but things are changing all the time, and he's still tweaking. Look, we all know how much Coach Boyle talks about logistics, and so he's always working on that stuff, and I want to make sure you guys know what's happening always at MBSC. We also spoke about his article, Orthopedic Costs, so he's going to talk about what he means by that, and look how he looks at whether or not he likes an exercise and what the orthopedic cost of that exercise can be. For the TrainHeroic data-driven coaching segment, Tim Robinson, Adam Dawdy continue their discussion on keeping your audience in focus. They're going to talk today about unique selling propositions, which is really super important. You should know about this and you should have one. So don't forget, Coach Boyle and I both use TrainHeroic to deliver our online training. We both love it. If you're a coach and you're not yet using TrainHeroic, I don't know what you're waiting for. They just launched plans that start as low as $10 a month, and they have a free 14-day trial. If you mention that I sent you, we're going to put a 4-week athlete development program in there from MBSC into your account, absolutely free. So if you're looking for the best online training solution in the game, go to TrainHeroic.com, take the 14-day free trial. All right, for the Body by Boyle Online.com, hit the gym with the Strength Coach segment. I have on Nate VanKouwenberg, and Nate is the founder and owner of Next Level Strength and Conditioning in Rochester. He's also a strength coach at RIT, men's hockey, Division I, and he's the strength and conditioning director and PE teacher at Victor Central Schools, upstate New York. He's been doing that for about 15 years. So we had a great conversation on his approach to physical education and how it's part of a bigger plan for him, getting buy-in from athletic directors, teachers, students, and the administration, building a high school strength and conditioning program from the ground up, how physical education at the lower grades transfers to athletics later, laying the foundations in elementary school and middle school PE. So he gives us all the stuff that he's going over. They do a lot of consulting with other school districts as well. So great stuff coming up from Nate in a little bit. All right, I got an announcement. No more functional movement system segment. Gray Cook, Lee Burton, they've been on this show. Guys, we're almost at 13 years to the day with this episode, but they've been doing this since day one. And, look, sometimes you want to move in a different direction. The world is changing. Gray and Lee actually have a beautiful new studio, and they've been doing some great videos, and they have their own podcast now. So it kind of made sense for them to kind of go in their own direction, really focus on that. So they've been such a great partner for me over all of these years, and I really appreciate everything they've done, not only for me, but the industry. So I have a couple of segments from Lee that I might put everything together in one episode in a couple of weeks, just to kind of tie a big bow on their segment. So once again, thanks to Functional Movement Systems for 13 years on the show. But I do have new segments coming. My mission with the Strength Coach Podcast to help fitness professionals become successful and make an impact in the world. I do that by providing as much information as I can from the best people in the world in this industry. And one of those people is Jenny Rarick. Jenny has a company called Fit to Speak, and She actually coached me on some things for my presentations that I do. And this segment is going to be, the Fit to Speak segment will be about not just speaking in front of doing a presentation. It's going to be, look, we're coaching all the time. We need to learn to communicate better that way. We need to learn to communicate better through whether it's Zoom calls, through presentations, text, email. Jenny's got us covered. And I'm really excited to introduce that segment next month, as well as the Movement as Medicine boys. Her husband, Jenny's husband, Brendan Rarick, and Kevin Carr, they own Movement as Medicine. They also own the Certified Functional Strength Coach certification with Coach Boyle. And they're going to be doing a segment as well. So I'm pretty excited for those changes to come up to give you guys as much information as we can on training, speaking, the online training game, everything. So I'm really excited about those things coming up starting in November. So guys, lots of things to get to. So let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. Try it out 30 days, still 30 days, just $1. We're doing that until, at least until all gyms are open, because believe it or not, some gyms are still closed. California has some closed. Canada just closed down in Toronto and in Ottawa for, I think, 28 days. Ridiculous, but 30 days, just $1. You have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. Coach, you're in Virginia. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Anthony. How are you? It's actually, the weather just turned, so it's looks like it's going to rain. But other than that, beautiful ocean view, loving life.
All right. Nice little lacrosse this weekend, right?
Yes. So Mark is playing in the Under Armour All-America game tomorrow. They start playing, so he'll be on the New England team.
Very cool. Nice. You know, let's actually start out with the COVID. You wrote an article that you're actually going to have. It's like a part of a piece of your book. You're rewriting, designing strength training programs and facilities. That was out in 2005, but it's actually free for anybody that joins StrengthCoach.com. But you're writing that, you're redoing that, and you added a part about the COVID changes in the weight room. First of all, before we go over those changes, do you feel like that? Look, this is pretty much what's gonna end. I mean, I know there's a lot of uncertainty, but you feel like, hey, you know what? Probably not even ever going to go back to it the other way.
I don't think we will go back to it, to be honest, at least from an organizational standpoint. I'm hoping we don't have to necessarily have masks on and be as adamant about staying in our lane kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the way that we're structuring the workouts right now and the way people are moving through the facility is going to actually be an efficiency improvement for us. So I think in some ways there'll be some positives that we walk out of this with, even if we, as I said, end up where we're not wearing masks. And if we want to walk from station to station, we can. But I think some of this stuff, at least from our standpoint, will be here to stay.
Yeah. So you're doing like the different pod style type of workouts, I guess we can call them. Talk to us about how because like normally you think of a pod, you think they're going to stay in that one spot. Everything is there. Yours seems to be a little different. Explain to us your pod system.
So effectively, we have 3 pods. So if we've got people coming every 15 minutes, you're moving forward into the next pod that has been basically cleaned by the person in front of you. So they're wiping down whatever they're using, dumbbells, bench, and then you move into their space and then they move forward. So instead of just having one singular pod that's set up with everything, we're trying to use our space more effectively and create these. Basically, we were told we needed 14 by 14. And so we've created these 14 by 14 spaces where the first one basically has your Olympic lifting bar and blocks and things like that. So you do your power exercises there. The next one has dumbbells and a bench. So you're going to do your dumbbell exercises there. And then the third one is the rack. So you're continuing to move forward. And it's very similar in concept to what we were doing anyway, but it just takes it, I think organizationally, it takes it one more level up.
Mike, did you have to like really, because it sounds like you go pod 1, 2, 3, Then you'll have another pod 1, 2, 3, and another pod. So 8 people. You said you have 8 racks, so you have 8 rows. So technically, you have 8 pod 1s, 8 pod 2s, 8 pod 3s. So really, you must have had to do some heavy moving.
We didn't. What we really had to do, and you've been in our facility. What we really did was we flipped our Kaisers around so that they face out onto the turf now. We moved our Olympic lifting areas out onto the turf, so we're basically cleaning on the turf now, or doing drop bar jumps, or whatever we're doing is being done on the turf. So
That's right.
And we had to move some dumbbell racks. We had to buy power blocks. It was I wouldn't say a major reorganization, but there clearly were some things that needed to be done.
Yeah, I did see that. That's right. You showed a video of some cleans on the turf, and that's right. I did see that. So very cool. I mean, yeah, it's definitely interesting. In your row too, you guys, you put a landmine in each row.
We did. We put a landmine in each row. We have a mini slide board in each row. So, we're trying to get it so that we can have an organized workout that's going to move the way that we want it to.
I love it. Good stuff, Coach. Definitely, we should get a video of that whole thing when you kind of settle in on it, because I think it can help a lot of people, not only in the bigger gyms but in the smaller gyms too. I think it's just the idea of it. It's a great system. So
exactly, that's what I was going to say. It's really the concept, because I think everybody can kind of look at it and think, okay, how can I reorganize my space? Because for us, what we're trying to do is really what everybody else is doing, which is we're trying to make the best use of the space that we have. Everybody's in the same boat, trying to make the best use of the space that they have. It's just a question of how much space do you have.
Yep, absolutely. Coach, you posted you saw an article from a guy named Daniel Kadick. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And it said, "Are running drills useless for athletes?" Your answer is yes and no. Obviously, it depends, but it's pretty straightforward. Yes and no. Can you go over your yes and no?
Well, I think there's coaches, when you think about the yes part, that think that you're going to get somebody faster doing high knees or doing heel ups or doing whatever drill you're doing. And I just don't think there's any reality to that at all. What we're seeing is that you're getting people faster by having them sprint. By the actual act is what is really creating the change in their speed, and not the mechanical things that people are doing. But the mechanical things that we're doing still constitute a really good warm up for sprinting. If you go back to look at my old developing linear speed video, one of the things we talked about, if you look at that warm up that we do pretty consistently, obviously if your high knee run is going to be a really good warm up for your hip flexors. Heel ups are going to be a really good warm up for your hamstrings. Straight leg skips are going to be a really good warm up for both your hip hip flexors and your hamstrings. Back pedal, backward run is going to warm up your quads. Like, there's all this stuff. It all ends up being good. I just don't think that any of it in and of itself is going to make someone faster. And I think what ends up happening is there are too many people focusing on the mechanics and not enough people focusing on the act of sprinting itself. And that's the point that we're trying to get across.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've been really hammering that idea home on Instagram, especially showing some different people sprinting. I forget the young lady's name who probably didn't have the greatest form, maybe with her arms, and you were like, look, she just ran like the fastest, like one of the fastest females you're going to see. Right. I mean, that's where sometimes we kind of overanalyze the form when somebody's already super fast.
Yeah, exactly. That was Alex Carpenter. She's the fastest female we've ever timed. And her mechanics are, if you look at her mechanics, her arms are, she's a skater, obviously, but her arms cross her body, her legs are a little funky. But the fact of the matter is, she's run a 107 fly 10, which is really fast. It's fast for a guy. So it's exceptional for a female. And I think, I guess that's where we're trying to get people to realize, is that I don't think you can teach somebody to run better as much as you can help them to run better. One of the things I've talked about is just this idea of self-organization, sort of that fast running teaches better fast running. When you're actually in the act and timing it, you get direct feedback. Did that work? Did that not work? Was I faster? Was I slower? And you start to modify. And in the couple of the speed talks that I've done, I've shown some slow motion video, which was on my Instagram at some point too, a while ago. But in the slow motion video, if you look, all the kids look remarkably similar, particularly in their lower body. If you kind of talk about this idea of shapes, if you look at their shapes look pretty good. They're getting maximum hip extension. They're stepping over their knee at about knee height. They're dorsiflex. And these are all things that we're not teaching. Really, we're never saying any of these things to any of our kids. We're just asking them to run fast. But the act of running fast seems to produce better fast running.
Coach, from the perspective of translating onto the ice, I know Alex is super fast, Alex Carpenter, but what about I know it's not Megan. Damn, who is the young lady that skated in the All-Star?
Callie Flanagan. She's fast too. Not
Callie
as fast.
Flanagan?
Yeah, and I haven't timed. I'd be interested to get Kendall Coyne and see what
Kendall Coyne. That's who I was thinking of. Yeah.
No, Callie Flanagan did the East Coast League game. Sorry, Kendall.
Oh, okay.
I haven't had Kendall around since we've been doing this, so I don't know. I know Kendall, her on ice sprint, gold to blue, was the fastest on the team.
Okay.
But I have not had her doing land sprinting under the same circumstances, so I don't know. My guess would be that it would be pretty close.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if she was the fastest female that we timed on land too, because that's what we see. If you look at the fastest guy is Eichel. And so, if you look at of our guys skating, he's obviously the fastest skater too. So Eichel hasn't run 20-yard fly yet. So but he's done, I think he did 1:05 or something with a 10-yard fly, which puts him, he might be like 0.97 or something when we get to 20-yard fly, which, really is sort of upper echelon for team sport athletes. And that's the difference. That's one of the things I've been saying to people. If you look at, Ben Johnson and those guys, Carl Lewis, I think they were 0.83 for 10 meters, which I think I equated it out to like a 0.79.
Wow.
Yeah. So you realize that it's like anything. Then you think someone is fast, and then you compare them to maybe the best person in the world at that. It's pretty different. Obviously, you look at guys like Johnson and Lewis couldn't skate, so there's some differential there.
Yeah, well, bottom line is, are they getting faster? That's the bottom line, right? Are they getting better and they're getting faster? And you've seen that, so that's what we're looking for. It's really interesting. Good stuff. Coach, last thing, I love this concept. You really briefly touched on it on a Coach's Minute recently, and then the orthopedic cost. You really like this idea. I personally really like this idea as well. Give us an overview of this.
Yeah, I made that comment to someone just sort of in passing, and I guess maybe I coined the term myself. I don't know if I've heard somebody else say it or not, but when I was trying to explain to somebody in the perennial sort of why I like unilateral stuff versus bilateral stuff, and one of the things that I said was, well, I think that the orthopedic cost, which is really the wear and tear on in my mind, the non-target areas, is lower. And whoever I said it to said, I really like that term. And I thought, yeah, I need to kind of try to put that into circulation a little bit more. So that was what made me do that post about orthopedic cost of the exercise, because I think it's a good way, when you look at evaluating exercises and you say, well, why don't you like behind the neck pull downs? Well, I don't like behind the neck pull downs because I think the orthopedic cost to the shoulder is too high. I think if I get the bar in front of you, the orthopedic cost is drastically decreased. I'm not taking you into like a maximally abducted, externally rotated kind of position and then pulling down. I'm not, in the impingement zone. So what you're really doing when you're choosing exercises or when you're modifying exercises or whatever you're doing, we would call it looking at risk-benefit ratio, right? But I think risk-benefit ratio is really analyzing the orthopedic cost. What's the orthopedic cost of this exercise versus what's the perceived benefit of the exercise? And I guess it maybe takes that idea one step further.
Mike, what about so I was just thinking about this. And so, like we look at the back squat, you've talked a lot about, the orthopedic cost isn't on the legs, obviously, it's on the back, right? And what if, are we always talking about everything we talk about is heavy, heavy, heavy? But why can you do let's say I don't know, a 32K goblet squat is okay. But you're not okay with doing 135 pound back squat. You just don't feel even for reps or whatever.
Well,
if you're doing a goblet squat, you're like, oh yeah, we can do it. But we get up to, the most, the highest kettlebell we have, I don't know, what is it, 106 pounds maybe. But you won't do a back squat with only 135, which wouldn't have a huge orthopedic cost.
Right. Well, it is two things. One, Gray likes to talk about the idea of self-limiting exercise. Eventually, goblet squatting becomes to some degree a self-limiting exercise because you just can't get the weight into position to do it with what we might consider to be an unreasonable load. Yeah. And the other thing which I talk about all the time too, is the slippery slope idea. It's sort of once you say, oh, well, we can do some light back squats and that's not going to be a big deal. It's not until the next person comes in and says, well, I want to do 225. And the next person says, well, I want to do 315. Next person says, I want to do 405. Do you know what I mean? You open Pandora's box in these situations with people, and then things spiral out of control relatively quickly. And I always say, I kind of fall back on my college days. And that's the one thing I realized is that as soon as you let something go, it's almost immediately too far gone. And then you have trouble reeling it back in again. And so I think you have to be really careful that maybe you just say, okay, no, these are things that we're not going to do because we know that they are things that will tend to spiral out of control. The other thing I always said, it's really hard to goblet squat poorly, but you watch people back squat. I would say, I'd venture to say that 80% of the squats I watch, on the internet, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever it is, I don't think are very good. I see lots of people, I see back positions I don't like. I see people bouncing out of the bottom. And I think in general, I don't see it. Donnell Boucher posted a great one of his female athletes. And I literally posted a unicorn emoji. I said, if every back squat looked like that, I'd probably like back squats a lot better.
Yeah.
But the reality is they don't. And so you get into that sort of slippery slope and, you go back to, I always remember Kevin Larrabee, how shitty is too shitty. And so if you're choosing things with lower orthopedic costs and they go bad, then there's less price to be paid at the point of failure or the point of things going bad. I always think things go bad in a heavy back squat, there's a real good chance someone's going to hurt their back. Things go bad in a heavy goblet squat, you probably end up with a kettlebell or a dumbbell on the floor in front of you and kind of no harm, no foul sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it's true. Good point. All right, Coach. Well, we'll let you go on that note. Get back to, hanging out in Virginia, waiting for the All-American game. So have fun this weekend and have a safe trip home.
Okay, thanks, yeah. I'll see you.
All right, right now at Perform Better, they got free shipping on orders over $49. Guys, I just I'll give you a little pro tip here. I know if you've looked in the past, we know that all the equipment companies had shortages right during the shutdown. Perform Better has been stocking up. They're almost at full capacity with so many different things. They're always getting new things in, new shipments in. So the best thing to do if you want something is really to call them. Call them because they can either give you an alternative at the same price, or they can tell you when it's coming in. So the best thing to do is get on the phone with Perform Better to find out what's happening. We're actually going to have Chris on the podcast next episode because I want to ask him about the current status and some things that they have coming up. So remember, go to performbetter.com, check it out. But phone number's there. call them if you don't see what you want.
Hey, this is Adam.
This is Tim.
Welcome to the TrainHeroic Data-Driven Coaching segment.
Yeah, baby.
Today, Tim and I are going to follow up on an online coaching topic we started last time, really relevant to any business or brand, which was keeping your audience in focus. One thing about that is, it's related to this kind of classic sales idea of a unique selling proposition,
Right.
which is kind of just the way that you can briefly explain your offerings in a way that distinguish yourself and are like intriguing.
Yeah, people have short attention span, especially nowadays, right? So you need to be able to grab these people's attention within a couple seconds, and that's no exaggeration. You only have seconds to make an offering, a product, your brand intriguing to people. And I think the first step in kind of working down this road to the unique selling proposition is realizing that everything has been done, right? That's kind of the, something we surface here at TrainHeroic. Everything has been done. And what you're doing, it probably isn't something that's outrageously different, right? It's just maybe 10 to 20% different. And I tell our coaches from time to time when I get on the horn with them, and they're struggling with this, the biggest thing that differentiates your offering, your product, your brand from other folks are the collection of things that make you, you, right? You're the biggest differentiator here. And I think of this as like, the best example I've heard is it's like when you're first in the market to buy a house, right? You need to check in order to make this huge purchase, biggest purchase of your life possibly, you need to check all of these boxes. It's not just like, I want a house for this price. I check it, we go and we purchase that house. All of those things need to fit together. The right house checks all the boxes, not just the first one, the right price.
Yeah.
So knowing that and thinking about that example, there's a lot of things that you provide that check off these boxes.
Yeah, there's something you said a second ago, though, I think is important, is that the idea that everything's been done. I mean, yeah and no, right? Like the twist you put on things and the improvements you make can feel substantial to somebody, right?
Right.
But the point is that you have to sell that and you have to make it a bigger deal, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you literally invented training. You invented the light bulb, it doesn't have to be that way though. But some coaches just aren't they want to sell the steak. Like, I don't know, you lift heavy weights and you get stronger. That's my attitude. I'm a terrible salesperson, right? I don't know, just show up and do the work. What's your problem?
Yeah, work hard.
Exactly. But that's I don't like selling things. But you have to kind of you're a creative person. You've got a cool idea. Awesome. You still have to be able to briefly, succinctly get your hooks in someone when you get in front of them.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Go ahead, Adam.
Well, you were talking about that, buying a house. I was thinking about applying for a job. It's it's kind of like people saying well, I've got a degree and it doesn't get you a job, right? Well, no, right? Everybody's got one these days. So it's not distinguishing, right? But there's all these other little things that do distinguish you from other people, right?
Yeah.
It's very similar to that.
And being a coach who has hired interns, someone who's been on hiring staffs, we call that the difference between being qualified and then being the right fit for the position, right? So the bachelor degree, the CSCS, the personal training certification, those get you through the door. Again, there's a lot of boxes that need to be checked to make sure if you're applying for a job, in your example, that you get that job. It's the same thing when someone's purchasing a product.
Yeah.
And I think a really good way and a good tool coaches can use is to discover the personality traits that you have as a coach, as a person, and also find what you think is attractive or not attractive in other people. If you can do that, the people you're aiming for, right? These are people that are going to be similar to you. They're people that might be like you were 10 years ago, and they're following you as an aspirational, person that they can follow.
Yeah.
So if you connect to those people, you've now got a pretty unique selling opportunity to get these people in the door. You were just like me then, right? I'm here now. Follow me in this journey. We can get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, you're talking about setting the stage for telling a story, or letting the customer tell themselves a story, right?
Yeah,
people want to belong to something that they see themselves. They can see themselves in, and it's something either aspirational or it's it rings a bell with them because oh, that is me. That's just like me. But give us an example of how this plays out in real life. You've done this with some people over time. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So some coaches, just in the way they use language, the way a coach speaks about something. Some folks will actually reach out and say, that was a little offensive, or like, I didn't really, like the way you said that. You may have offended that person. It's not a bad thing, though. It just means maybe they're not a right fit for your offering. Now, that's a small example, and this plays out at a much bigger stage. But paying attention to those little details, that's a huge help for a lot of our coaches.
Yeah, what you just said is basically like, you can't, if you're for everybody, you're for nobody.
Exactly right.
That's what you're saying is like, if you're for a specific type of person, right, there are going to be other people who are like, nah, man, that's not for me. And that's okay. As long, as long as the market you've identified is big enough and you can reach them, you're golden there.
Yeah. Reach out to your friends and colleagues and ask them, why would people come to me, or why wouldn't they? They'll be a good help for you.
Well, that's going to do it for us today. Go to TrainHeroic.com, start your 14-day free trial. One cool thing is we've got new pricing in there, starting as low as $9.99 to suit any kind of coach.
All right, now it's time for the BodyByBoyleOnline.com Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment. Become an insider to Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning with staff meetings, in-services, and complete access to the MBSC programs. Mike takes off the summer for meetings, but they just started. We just posted 2 meetings, like from 2 weeks in a row. Great stuff kind of coming back, talking about what they're doing right now. So, guys, make sure you check that out at BodyByBoyleOnline.com. All right, today I have on Nate VanKouwenberg, and Nate is the founder and owner of Next Level Strength and Conditioning in Rochester, New York. That's not all he does, though. He's the strength coach for RIT Men's Hockey, which is a Division I program, no joke. He's been there for like 6 years. And he's also the strength and conditioning director and physical education teacher at Victor Central Schools. He's doing all that. This isn't like the past, like he was a PE teacher, then was a strength coach, now he owns his own business. These are all the things he's doing right now. So Nate, thanks for coming on, bud.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. It's a huge honor. Big fan of all the stuff you guys are doing. So I really appreciate having me.
All right. I just want to tell everybody that I just made a mistake, or one of my cardinal sins. For all you young podcasters out there, Nate does not exactly have the easiest name. Just looking at it, Nate, did I pronounce that right?
You crushed it, and I was actually waiting because we haven't really talked about it. But
I always ask, kids. You always have to ask.
No, I've heard it all. You nailed it. Good job.
All right, sweet. Like I said, I mean, you're doing all of these things. You have Next Level at in Rochester. It's a private facility, and you work with a lot of athletes. We see all the work you're doing. Nate is also a longtime contributor, active contributor on TrainCoach.com. You see on his social media platform that these guys, Joe Artari, these guys are doing it. And they're posting it out there. They're educating people. He's also, again, RIT Men's Hockey, strength and conditioning director, PE teacher at Victor Central Schools. And we're going to get into that a little bit. He's also has 8 other local high schools as their official strength and conditioning provider. And they are doing a lot of workshops to teach coaches how to really implement this whole process of building a high school strength and conditioning program from the ground up. And we're going to talk about that. But Nate, I want to talk about, let's start with the basics right now. And PE teacher in Victor Central Schools, upstate New York. And talk to us about your approach, because for me, from what I've learned about you is that like this is part of a bigger plan that you've been doing. You've been there for a while, but you're also implementing some things that are laying the groundwork for some bigger things. Talk to us about what you're doing there and how you're approaching that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been there for 16 years now, and right out of college, I started teaching phys ed. I went to Brockport State and upstate New York for phys ed, and my original goal was to be an AD, and then actually through playing hockey, started to do actually some of Mike's early on stuff with a former teammate that was training with him at the time. Started to see some single leg training and, plyometrics. I never did any of that before. So seeing what a difference it made for me halfway through my college career, I started to shift my focus from phys ed to more of the strength conditioning stuff. So my phys ed major was biomechanics, kinesiology, anatomy, ex-phys, all the same stuff a lot of the same stuff you would get in an ex-phys program. So when I got out, I obviously went into teaching phys ed, but obviously strength conditioning became a huge passion for me. And even though I was teaching phys ed, I started to continue to do a lot of the strength conditioning stuff, started Next Level right around that same time. So I continue to teach phys ed, which I'm still doing today, but in the same time, starting to grow next level. And it was really cool to see some of those things merge from my strength conditioning background, and how could I apply that to the phys ed piece. Now, I'm sure if you're thinking right now, you've seen some of these awesome movies just kind of roasting the old school gym teacher, right? Like Coach Hines on Med TV, right? And those people unfortunately still exist. And what we're trying to do is really increase the level of what physical education looks like. And every kid is mandated to have phys ed. And I know the states are a little bit different, but I know in New York State, where we are, every kid is mandated to have phys ed. I mean, that's a massive opportunity for us to really make a long-term impact and improve wellness across the board. So continuing to do more with strength conditioning. I try to start to implement that into the curriculum where I am at Victor. Now, Victor is a nationally recognized PE program. It was before I got there. My old AD, Ron Wickham, is a legend of legends in the phys ed world. And it's, K-12 sequential curriculum, assessments across the board, a wide range of very progressive units, stuff that you don't think of when you're watching some of these movies ripping on old school gym teachers and bike shorts. And, what they weren't necessarily doing is implementing functional strength training, implementing, some of those more high quality fitness components that was a big passion of mine at the time. So started to dive in and really look at how can we start teaching kids what's best for them if they're going to enter a fitness center. And we talk to kids about something's better than nothing for the most part, unless it's dangerous, obviously. But if you're going to walk into a fitness center or a weight room and you want to get the best bang for your buck, what are you going to do? Are you going to jump on an elliptical machine, or are you going to do some compound movements? And really through the last 12 years of trying to make a difference in that side of things, we've seen a huge culture change, and we're trying to kind of spread that outside of just our district now. And again, the goal is to help as many people as we can. And I own a private facility, and we love to work with athletes, but we will never see even a small fraction of the kids at our private facility at next level than we'll see, at a school district with that mandated PE piece.
Yeah, in defense of Coach Wickham, is that what his name was?
Yeah, Mr. Wickham. Yeah.
In his defense, though, 12 years ago, 16 years ago, this was relatively new. Boyle's book came out in 2004. Right. I mean, Vern Gambetta was preaching some of this stuff early, but like that, you had to be really looking for that. So. Right. Talk to me about how do we get this idea of functional strength training in physical education? I'm not saying you got lucky, but like you said, he was already a nationally recognized program. How did you have to approach getting it into your school, because you still had to do that, and then how do you teach others to kind of get these type of things in their PE program?
Right. And we talked a little bit before about roadblocks, and every single district, even a nationally recognized program like Victor, there are roadblocks. And it really comes down to what people are comfortable teaching. And, despite the teachers there before I got there doing all of these things that very few schools in the whole country were doing with assessment and progressive curriculum, they still were hesitant to get kids off of machines or potentially do some more of these compound movements that we obviously know a lot more about today. And, my goal was to start small and just really try to introduce first and foremost the why behind it. And we talk about the why all the time, obviously, but if people don't understand why this is going to help them more than potentially a selectorized machine or, a cardio machine, then why would they make a change? So I think, again, just a culture piece is, why are some of these more compound movements more important for kids, more important for us as adults? And then from there, just trying to slowly make some changes as to what that curriculum looks like. And, people don't like to do what they're not good at. Like, my background was a fitness background. So a lot of this stuff were things that I was doing anyway, and I know it really well. But if you take someone that's never done it and then you throw it in their face, they're going to have a much harder time to feel comfortable enough to implement it.
What is the roadblock initially? Is it an insurance thing? Is it like, hey, Nate, we can't do this. These kids are going to get hurt. Is it like just this idea about, risk reward idea. So where is that block that, that coaches or strength coaches are finding in these programs?
Yeah, and functional fitness is definitely a much more well-known thing now, obviously in the last 5 to 10 years. But if you think back beyond that, like even when Coach Boyle was just coming out with some of this stuff, like you walk into a gym, a fitness center, and it's just all machines. So I think the biggest thing are people that don't want to change and don't see the benefit. And like I said, there are a lot of really high quality phys ed programs and people out there now. But there are still some old school people kind of hanging on, and they're there more for a paycheck to impact kids. And I'm lucky enough to work in a district where that's not the case. But it's really just getting people to be more comfortable, because you've heard the horror stories of the tenured teacher that doesn't necessarily want to make a change, and they're there and they can't remove them. And I think the biggest piece is making sure teachers understand how much of an influence they can have over kids. And you know as well as I do, high school kids and junior high kids, like it's a lot of ego, it's a lot of testosterone maybe, and you walk into a unsupervised environment where there's weights involved and it's cringeworthy, right? So if anything, it's for us to say, okay, kids are probably going to do some of this stuff anyway. How can we make sure we're teaching them how to do it safely and how to do it correctly? So again, I'm a used car salesman to my staff at Vic, not my staff, but my colleagues at Victor, to staff that we'll go and we'll work with, to the kids, because even though they've been seeing this for several years through the phys ed programs, it's a sequential kind of curriculum. There's still kids who would rather do other things. They'd rather jump on a machine, or they'd rather go straight to the bench every single day. So it's way more about being a salesman. Like why is this better for you? Just convincing people that if I've got 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes in a weight room or a fitness center, how can I get the very best bang for my buck? And how is that going to improve whatever it is I care about? And we Anthony, with functional strength training, it's not just for athletes. It's not just going to make you faster and be more powerful, which it will, but it's also going to, if you care about your body composition, and I have the option of, sitting on a selectorized machine or an elliptical, or I'm going to do a full complex of compound movements. We all know what's going to be the most beneficial there. So it's just selling to kids and to teachers why that's so much more beneficial and important.
And how do you sell it to the teachers and the people in charge? Do you say, guys, let me show you, let me do a class. Why don't you guys come in? Let's do this. Like, how do you do that? Because they're not so easily influenced.
No, they're not. And we do, like I said, we do a lot of staff development workshops. And what's been a recent trend is our district is very, very successful in athletics. And, I'll never take even an ounce of credit for any of that. It's all the coaches and the kids. But piece of that trend is potentially they've been learning all of these skills since they were, in elementary school now. And we can talk a little bit about what that looks like at the different levels. It's obviously not like they're learning some of these major, exercises early on. But when they get to athletics, it's already ingrained. So instead of having to go in and teach a squat, a deadlift, a clean, or whatever from scratch, they know it. And some of these coaches from other districts are like, holy moly, what's going on over there? And how are you guys, starting to turn out athletes like this? And again, I'll never take credit for that, but they start to ask more questions. And then, potentially our AD says, hey, well, this is what we're doing in phys ed, and it transfers to athletics. And most PE teachers coach, and a lot of these older school PE teachers still might be a coach. So if you can speak coach and you can speak PE teacher and start to figure out what they care about the most, then maybe they'll start to consider it. So that's what I've been doing is how can we sell it? How can we speak PE teacher? How can we speak coach and really get them to realize how important it can be for them?
Cool. Can you just go over, take a step back? I want to just lay out the program, not everything in the program, you know what I mean, but the levels that you just talked about. Like, okay, we can go over the levels. What are the levels? Are they starting in? What are you doing for the elementary school or recommending? What happens in middle school? And then once you get to high school, we'll start to talk about where that's when things start to get really serious, and there's more people out there are going to be strength and conditioning coaches that are listening to this for a high school program. We could talk about that. But what are the levels before that in elementary and that you guys and middle school that you are preaching?
Right. So again, there are a lot of really good PE programs doing a lot of really good fitness things out there. But most, Anthony, are just doing just supervised weight room or fitness center. I've seen some really, really ugly things where kids are flipping tires, kids are, doing some really ugly things because potentially their teacher likes to work out in some of those regimens and thinks it's okay for kids to do. So we've seen it all from, just kids doing their own thing to some really dangerous things. And I guess the goal is to say, where do we want kids to be when they're done with our phys ed program? So as a upperclassman, and then how do we design down and deliver up? So it shouldn't just be like, okay, this is a good workout today, but just like anything, like we're big CFSC guys at Next Level. And, we have our own progression and regression list at every pattern. And it's really like, okay, this is baseline. And then how do we build up from there? And for that to happen, you have to communicate between your staff. Like I can come in and teach a squat or a hip hinge and, implement it in a functional program for that day. And that's going to be great for the kid. Maybe I turn on a light bulb and they're going to want more. But if I'm not communicating that to the teacher that's going to get them in that next year, then it's lost, right? But if I can know exactly what they did the year before and what they're going to do the year after, we can start to build something there, and it just becomes part of the culture. So specifically, in the elementary levels, like it's what a lot of that they're already doing. We're going to teach, crawling, rolling, skipping, galloping, a lot of these gross movement patterns that elementary PE teachers are already doing. You're not necessarily teaching skills. Like Jeremy Frisch talks a lot about that stuff with younger kids. They shouldn't know they're learning some of these functional patterns. It should be in fun games, activities, warm-ups, stations, and things like that. But we do give teachers some ideas that they can plug in at those lower levels. But then when they get into more that middle school level, 6th or 7th grade, depending on your district, that's when we start with some of those baseline patterns. So you'd be amazed when we go in and we talk to phys ed programs and we start with, the 101, the functional strength training 101, and we talk about, movement patterns over muscle groups, and their minds are just blown. They're like, wait, this is how you organize a workout or a program. And it's really eye-opening to them. So if we can start there, and then for each movement pattern, start to give our baseline. So an example, a goblet squat, RDL, a push-up, and like a TRX row would be some baseline I can come up with the top of my head. And then from there, you teach it to the kids. We actually teach, we give cues, they practice it, we plug it into a program. And then the next year we review those skills, but then we build on it. We go to the next progression in our general progression list, right? So maybe it's a single leg RDL, maybe it's a dumbbell bench or whatever the case may be. And then we build on it the year after. So it's reviewing what you did the years before, building on after. But for that to happen, you have to be communicating within your program and your PE program. So, but think about what that looks like now when a kid gets to high school after these few years of learning some of these basic skills. Now they go into a fitness center, and instead of jumping to a machine, they're going to a kettlebell, or they're going to a chin-up bar or a trap bar. Or maybe they go to train with their team for the first day, and instead of having to start from scratch with some of these compound exercises, they know it, right? So now you're just plugging it into programs. So the fact that it benefits athletics kind of indirectly is a very good selling point to coaches and PE teachers.
Nate, what you do a lot of workshops in different places teaching this stuff, and just I've never really asked it this way, but what are the not with my clients, not in my house, not in my schools that you're getting? What's the resistance that you get that I know some of my people, some of my listeners are saying in their head right now, wow, that's good, but we can't get kettlebells. We don't have the budget. What are some of those that you get that you try to talk to about overcoming?
Yeah, and I've gotten really good at just smashing excuses, because when you take a PE teacher that's on their way out and they just want to kind of ride it out, and their young AD, their progressive AD is coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do this instead. And they're just putting their foot down. No, we found every single way to smash excuses. So people used to say, oh, but I don't have the budget that you guys do at your school district, and I can't buy all this equipment. It's like perfect, because you don't need a ton of equipment. You need less equipment. The first thing we'll do when we come into a school district for a training is we'll be like, okay, this is what we need to get rid of. Let's sell this selectorized stuff and open this floor up and get kids moving in functional patterns. And we all know that that's a big difference from back in the day when we would see all these machines. And so that's a big thing right there is the money piece. And it always comes down to that. You don't need a ton of money. Like, give me a handful of dumbbells and whatever you have, and we can make it work. It's not like we're trying to create these powerlifting champions in phys ed and the junior high school and high school. So that's kind of one of the big things we've seen. The other piece, and this is the biggest one, is that they can't do this. And, we have had so many times we'll go into a district, and even our district, where we've got some of the best teachers in the country. And the biggest hesitation is, I can't teach that because I don't know how to do that. And honestly, at this level, it should be so very basic that anyone can demonstrate this. Unless you have a serious physical limitation, everyone should be able to demonstrate it. So what I had a lot of people kind of saying no right away because maybe I was trying to be too complex right away. So for anyone listening that wants to try to get into a PE program and make some improvements, like, start very basic with the most, foundational patterns, so that these people are comfortable demonstrating it, because you have to demonstrate it. The next piece I would tell people is lean on your kids, like lean on some of your more athletic kids that have some experience here that can teach it, and help you demonstrate it, even if you're the one that's verbally helping them out. But the biggest game changer for us was video. Like, okay, you don't want to demonstrate it. Here's a video of me demonstrating it, or this YouTube video that I'll recommend to you, where you just hit play. Like, it's 2020. We've got endless technology in schools now. You don't have to demonstrate it. So from there, debunking all of those excuses, people just kind of ran out of gas, I guess, and started to try it. And then once people tried it and they saw how much their kids liked it and how much, like I said, there's a connection to your athletics program. Let's be real here. And that's what a lot of these teachers that coach care about. You started to see a lot of those hurdles and barriers break down.
Very cool. Well, let's go into a little bit more of the high school program, because I know there's a lot of people out there. One of the not excuses, and it's true, is that, okay, they have this gig at the high school, and they want to do this program. Let's say they've had a lot of barriers. They're not part of the elementary school or middle school, and they're really just getting kids. This is the first that they're going to be exposed to this. So talk to us about building that high school strength and conditioning program from the ground up, and what you recommend and what you teach, and some of the things that you've done.
Right. So again, like, I'm very well aware of some of these national programs at the high school level that put a lot of colleges to shame. Like, we work with the NHSSCA, and some of those guys down south, man, they've got some amazing facilities and programs, and that's unreal, but that's a huge minority, right? So like, there are most schools, what you see is you have a weight room full of a bunch of machines and some random free weights, and then just some person on their computer that's there while the kids do whatever they think is best for them, right? The other thing that you're going to see is you see maybe a team coach running workouts, and this is what I did back in the 80s and 90s, or maybe I do this on my own time, and this is what I think is right, when it has zero meaning or scientific basis. You see kids, coaches just trying to beat the crap out of the kids to build mental toughness. And we've seen that, for a million years, right?
Yeah.
So when we come into a school district, and like I said, it has to start with the athletic director and the AD, if they're not behind it, because they're going to get a lot of phone calls, and they're going to get a lot of people bitching about having to make these changes. If they're not on board and they're not ready to take some of those calls, it's not going to work. So we'll have some of these young progressive ADs reach out and say, this is what I want to do. And it really comes down to, again, selling. Like, this is what this type of a program and this type of approach is going to do for you. and your program and your kids. And, just using examples, like using some of these examples of these high school programs that are building these stud athletes. The biggest piece is just breaking down old cultures, right? And we've seen it all online, and I've seen it in person as well. As I need my kids to lift as heavy as possible, and it needs to be this world record breaking stuff. And we all know that there's a time and a place for getting really heavy in the weight room, as long as it's done with meaning and scientific purpose and safely. But at the end of the day, like, we're trying to build athletes here. So if you can start to really try to get that through to coaches, that we're trying to build athletes, because that's what they do, they play sports, and try to just kind of break that in a little bit, sometimes that's been helpful. But from there, it's really just trying to keep things simple enough that they can see it happening in their district. Like, if you come in with this crazy complex program that's night and day different from what they've done, you might have a much harder time. So the biggest hurdle with high school programs from the ground up is same thing as the phys ed, is it's really trying to break through some of those misconceptions and some of those coaches that don't want to change. They like the way that they've done it. And what my advice would be with anyone starting a high school program would be like, know when to bend. The iron fist doesn't tend to work in this type of a situation, especially when you're potentially going to be younger than some of these coaches that have been there forever. And, you mentioned Joe Aratari at the top of the show, and, he's one of our top next level guys, and I owe a lot to him and a lot of other people for where we are. But the high school side of things, like, I think I'm very comfortable with what we're doing at Victor, but I still have haters there. Like, I still have people that I have to convince that this is more ideal than some of the more, the things that you're probably thinking about right now. And Joe, same thing at Penfield. He went through and he really built that program and really made a lot of people buy in. And, it's hard to deny success. So, like, if you start to see these districts really taking off and having success, you can never take credit for it, like I said. But that's when people start to ask questions like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? And that's when some people start to buy in. So it always comes down to why, knowing the difference between speaking coach and speaking athlete, really giving the haters out there, every single reason to potentially make a change. And when you are making those changes, really thinking about befriending those people that are the doubters, and really think about, like, how can I get into their good graces first, even if maybe they're not doing things the way you would hope. And from there, like, if you can get some of those people that are going to be your biggest doubters to buy in even a little bit, you're going to start seeing other people fall in line. So we first and foremost, we look for the influencers, whether it's the coach that is really going to be a big influencer, the athlete that's one of the top athletes, or some of the kids that are out there a lot, and really attacking them first and being like, hey, this is what we can do to help you. And then from there, if they can buy in, it starts to spread. So those are some things that have worked for us in the past.
Yeah, it reminds me of Coach Boyle, and he's been saying this for a long time. I remember when my friend Dana Cavalier at the time in the mid 2000s was getting the gig for the Yankees, and I introduced him to Mike at the time, and they had a nice conversation just about, don't go in there guns a-blazing, like, go make friends. Mike said even at Mike's, like, Mike was training, John Henry, the owner of the Sox at the time, and that's how he ended up getting the gig with the Red Sox. And he still didn't go in there guns a-blazing. He went in there, learned everybody's name, learned their kids, looked at their bios. I mean, he went in there, wasn't even strength and conditioning in the beginning. He said it was just more about building relationships and then slowly adding some things. And then by year 2, boom, you got control of a lot of stuff. And that's when they won the World Series, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. So. No, but being on the forum a lot, man, like, I see a lot of these questions coming through about, I've tried this and it's not working. I've tried this and it's not working. It's not going to work every time, and it's not going to work overnight. Like I said, I've been doing the strength conditioning at my district for a long time now, and I still have to answer questions with people thinking that this would be a better way. And think about a district where they're just starting. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a while, but you have to have that passionate person within the district that's willing to work at it for a long time. keeping the programming insanely simple, right? So focusing on just making sure technique is clean first and that the culture is there, people want to be there. But the programming itself, like a lot of these people are very young training ages, linear progression, progressive overload, very, very basic stuff. I've seen a lot of high school programs get way too complex, way too soon. And that tends to turn some people off at times as well. So focusing more on culture, getting people excited to be there, making sure everything in the weight room looks good and kids understand why it should look good and how it's going to benefit them. And then just be willing to ride it out, because it's not going to be an overnight thing. So, whether it's someone that's in a district or it's a strength coach looking to get into a district, that would be my advice is keep it simple and make sure people understand the why behind it.
What about the rest of the school? I know, the athletes they do drive it, but what is the approach that do you even mention, those kids, that here's what we're going to do. We're going to make them, better human beings. We're going to even if they're not playing a sport. What about those kids in that physical education?
Right. And I guess going back to that. So it's, again, selling, day one, selling. It's like, okay, why should you care about this? We list every single benefit of a functional strength training style workout over just some random fitness exercise, on machines, whatever the case may be. And you look at every population. So in my class, I know this kid's a hockey guy. Like, think about, this is the same stuff I do with my pro hockey guys in the summer. And then this person is into martial arts and being like, hey man, you don't need to be an athlete to care about this stuff. And then, throwing that out there too, like, hey girls, I'm sure that you're probably thinking, I don't want to get big and bulky by doing this. Like, it's not going to happen. And thinking about, all of the general fitness benefits of this as well, from a metabolism side of things, from a energy balance side of things, literally hitting every single possible population in that class and throwing out a couple of things as to why you should care about this and why you should start to do this stuff on your own. And like I said, like, the culture in the last handful of years from doing this, even in my district, is, like I said, like, if I were to walk into a fitness center and say, okay guys, you've got 20 minutes of free time, go. You used to have people, and I would never do that, but you would have people sprinting to the machines, right? And fighting over the machines. And now if I were to do that, they're sprinting to the chin-up bar, or they're sprinting to the trap bar, the kettlebells, and the machines are empty. And we don't have many machines anymore. But you know what I mean? Like, that culture shift has been really cool to see. And I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Like, again, through Next Level, we might work with a few hundred kids a year, or whatever that number might look like. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of kids in our region that are mandated to have this every year. Like, why are more strength coaches with this background not focusing on more of those masses? Not just from a benefit standpoint and an impact standpoint, which should be in all of our core values, but honestly, even from a business standpoint. Like, if you're a private sector person, like, I would very strongly suggest trying to make some more connections with schools because of that mandated piece. And there's a lot of benefit to that as well.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. I had Caleb Heilman on from oh man, I forget if it's South or North Dakota. I think it's South Dakota. Man, sorry, Caleb. But he did a great job in his town. He's got his facility, and he's got Minute University, and then the Minute School District. And you have 8 local high schools, and you're the official strength and conditioning provider. But from a business perspective, we all right, you're selling. We know that, but how do you approach these high schools? Do you say, hey, look at the job we're doing over here. Here's the results, blah, blah, blah. How? Because I think this is so important for strength coaches. And I preach a lot of, multiple revenue streams a lot of times. And, especially with what happened with COVID, you want to make sure you're diversifying your portfolio. So, how do we do this, Nate? How do you get into 8 local high schools?
Yeah, and I have to give a ton of credit to Joe Aratari at Penfield. And if you don't know Joe, obviously he's a very passionate kid, and he, again, really made some crazy changes at his school at Penfield. And he was placed there, when we made that relationship with their district. But then honestly, it came down to people contacting us. It's the job that he did on social media and people being like, hey, how do I kind of get involved in this? And we didn't have a business plan for it. We made a ton of mistakes early on with it. But now at this point, we're actually turning schools, away because we want to make sure what we're doing is quality. And we have an internship program through Next Level that we basically are grooming our next high school coaches. Then we place them at the high school, and we try to have them at Next Level as much as possible as well. And, through the COVID stuff right now in New York State, a lot of things are on hold. So we don't know what this year will look like with a lot of our schools. But at this point, if you do a good job, people are going to come to you. And again, we're more regional right now, and I think more of a broad scale. There's definitely a way to market it. But, a lot of the things you see online are only the good. You see these national, strength programs at the high school level that would put a lot of colleges to shame. Like I said, you see all the stuff that Joe's doing at Penfield and we're doing at Victor, but you don't see the majority of schools that aren't doing anything or doing things that are literally dangerous for kids. So if we can start to kind of target, like I said, the one or two people potentially in that district with an interest, with potentially a fitness background even, and get them excited about it, that's a good way to possibly make some of those changes.
Love it. Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. Again, that I love this idea about diversifying the portfolio, getting as many tentacles out there. I got a business question for you though, with this COVID stuff right now, and the fact that high schools are up in the air, high school sports, etc. Have you seen, because has this helped Next Level as well? People saying, well, we can't work out at school right now. Next Level's open. They're doing some programs. Has there been a little jump at Next Level because of that?
Yeah, and it's been interesting, man. As you know, I know we've talked a lot over this time frame, but things are just different, right? So like at our facility at Next Level, we can only have so many people in, and we're used to in a summertime, let's say, and I know Mike in the last podcast talked about the difference of the summer where we would actually be running camps at each of our school districts with, 50 to 100 kids, and we didn't do one this year. So are there kids looking for programs individually? Absolutely. And we had a really good last month and two and that side of things, but also there's a huge part of training with your team. Like there's a huge team camaraderie component to working out with your teammates. And I think people are just craving that so much right now in our area because it's not really happening. But we've had a bunch of teams reach out to us about doing sessions. I guess the downfall of where we are is, you only have a certain number of people out in the facility. So we did set up a pretty cool outdoor area where we've been training some teams out there. So honestly, we're trying to roll with the punches and, do whatever we can for kids. But the good news is that kids are back in school. They're having mandated phys ed, right? And with all of these different guidelines in place where right now in New York, you can't share equipment, like you can't be in a certain distance away from each other. What can we do is we can do a lot of these functional exercises, and we can do a lot of these fitness-based activities. And, I guess always trying to find the positive wherever we can.
Yeah, very cool. Let's just take a quick, let's go to the more experienced high school strength and conditioning programs, and that you see, because I know you're on the forum a lot. You've been an active member of StrengthCoach.com for a long time, and we have a high school forum on there. What are, besides just the guys trying to kill the kids with a lot of weight, what are some recommendations that you would say from a high school athlete programming perspective at a higher, starting to get a higher level? They have some good sports there. These coaches want to get their the young ladies and young men to be better, to be stronger, to get all these great things. What are some things that you would recommend that you've seen, some mistakes that people may be making, some coaches are making, that you feel like that you've seen, on the forums or out there doing some of your workshops?
Yeah. And I mean, I've made all these mistakes too. It's just being too complex, like focusing too much on the program, instead of the movement, instead of the progressive overload, instead of the culture in the room. So realizing, and I think I commented on this the other day, like it's very rare to have a perfect scenario at the high school level. And I know there are some of them out there, but traditionally kids are coming in from school without eating. You've got limited potentially space and equipment. They've got practice at a certain time throughout the day. So whatever the case may be, and you have to focus on what you can control. And what we always can control is the culture within that room. So making sure that they're working hard, but they're being good teammates and all those things, but also that the movement looks good. So if I have a room of, 30, 40 kids, and I'm trying to teach these crazy complex movements, even if they've had some background in phys ed or earlier years, are you going to really get as much out of it as simplifying, right? And it's really that, what's the end goal? To have a cool, Instagram post, or is it to really help the kids develop? So we keep it very simple, and even more so over the last few years. And this is the same thing we try to preach to people is it's, it's a squat, it's a hinge, it's a push, it's a pull, it's something powerful. So we'll do some clean progressions, but we've been doing a lot more like trap bar jumps. We do a lot of split squats. We do a lot of single leg deadlifts, and we love to bench, and we love to do chin ups and rows and all of those things. But what else do you need? Some med ball work, some jumps, some sprints, obviously. But if you're getting outside of some of those foundational pieces, like realize that these kids, even if they're stud high school athletes, like their training age is probably only a few years old, even if they've been doing this stuff in phys ed. So getting into like more of these complex programming, systems and more complex movements than that, and just focusing on the meat and potatoes first, and having kids excited to be back. And like I said, when kids start, especially the boys, like they start putting on weight because they've been doing some of these compound movements, and they start to see themselves being faster on the field, and we start to see some of these injury rates go down. Like it's not going to happen overnight, but with some very basic methods, like the proof is in the pudding. And that's when people start to turn their heads and the kids start to buy in, and you start to answer less questions from doubters. And that seems to be what has been working for us and a lot of the other districts we work with.
Very cool. Let's just finish up with a little bit of the personal development type stuff. Again, you have Next Level, which is a private facility, and you're the strength coach for the RIT men's hockey. And obviously we just talked about your role in Victor Central Schools. How do you, and we preach a lot here, or we've heard a lot here on like focusing on thinking about your mission, thinking about, shortening your goals, thinking about what it is that you really want to do. We've talked about a lot of this on the business of fitness, but it's really personal stuff as well, like picking some things that you're good at, staying with the mission. You have a lot of hats you're wearing. How do you manage that? And like for the future, do you feel like you're going to get rid of some of these things and kind of focus on some things now that you've had some skin in the game for 15, 16 years?
Yeah. And I answer that a lot. Like people kind of shake their head when they hear what I do. But at the end of the day, I think they all kind of feed each other. And reading your book, Anthony, Be Like the Best, I know a lot of those things are people, the fitness business people, Mr. Plummer and the Cosgroves are probably cringing if they listen to this. But, at the end of the day, I think all of my roles feed each other. And if I were to say, like, let's say my wife, who is amazing and beyond supportive, wouldn't be here if she didn't let me do all these awesome things. But let's say she said I had to give one up, I don't know how I would choose that. Like, I love RIT. I love, obviously, Next Level in teaching, but they all feed each other, right? And not only am I not good at sitting still, and I've tried it, but I think they all kind of help each other. Now, when it comes from a time is obviously something that there's only so much of. I've actually, believe it or not, have done a much better job recently of saying no. And that is something that I know a lot of people in your book talk about, and I've heard it a million times as well, is like, you have to learn to say no. And I've had this conversation with some of our young, more passionate coaches, is like, dude, that's too much. And, if you can't eat everything on your plate, then, it's not going to work out. So I've been able to, believe it or not, even though I've got 3 really main roles, work it out where at Next Level, I've turned from the jack of all trades to more of the business guy. I don't coach there during the year at all. I coach our pro hockey guys in the summertime, but that's it. But I've got an amazing staff: Joe Artari, Mike Moon, Jake Topple, Dylan Brickner, some of the best strength coaches around, that I don't have to worry about for a second that they're not, putting our mission out there, and it's not going to be quality. So that's a first and foremost. I wouldn't be able to do the other things without them. The teaching piece, I really make sure that when I'm there, I focus on doing the best job I can. And again, like if our true mission is to help as many people as possible, how can I potentially help more people than all these kids I get to see every single day? And I'll be honest, I used to like avoid telling some of my pro and D1 athletes or even other strength coaches in the field that I still teach phys ed because of some of the misconceptions about it out there. But I'm proud of it. Like as I become more mature, I realize that, that's an opportunity for me to help a lot of people. And then RIT, like right now, it's awesome. It's after school, a couple days a week. I go to home games. I scratch the coaching itch during the year. All of those roles really never are crazy at the same time. So I've got a pretty good situation right now. I've got 2 little kids. I've got an awesome wife where I can still spend a lot of time with them, still have plenty of time to socialize and golf and play hockey, those things, go to shows.
Tedeschi trucks, people.
There we go, buddy. I had to throw it in there. But it's really learning how to say no to the things that are going to make your plate overfull, but also knowing yourself well enough where if I don't have enough on my plate, I'm still going to be hungry. And I think where I'm at right now, it's all very manageable and I can give 100% to everything. I can honestly say maybe next level hasn't grown as quickly as it possibly could have because of that. But I can also say that we've grown, consistently throughout the last several years. And, I feel very good about our core values and the things that we're doing.
Great stuff. Yeah, you're doing some great stuff. Love it. Thank you, number 1, for coming on the show. Number 2, for all the contributions on strengthcoach.com. And 3, just really to the industry and remaining a really positive influence on coaches. And you guys are doing some great work up there. So Nate, thank you so much for coming on the show, talking all about this stuff.
Huge honor, Anthony. And thank you for everything you guys are doing. I really, really appreciate everything, man.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 297 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Remember, you can try strengthcoach.com out 3 days just to buck. You'll have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. Special thanks to Chris Potter and the folks over at Perform Better. Don't forget, right now at Perform Better, free shipping of over $49. Also, remember, give them a buzz if you don't see what you want. If you missed the summer series, the Perform Better app is coming out soon, and all the recordings will be on there, and you can check everything out at performbetter.com. All right, thanks to Coach Boyle and Nate VanKouwenberg for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and physical education. Thanks to Adam and Tim and TrainHeroic. Coach Boyle and I use TrainHeroic to deliver all of our online training. Head over to TrainHeroic.com to start your free 14-day trial. My name's Anthony Renner. My new book, Be Like the Best, consists of 50 interviews with top fitness pros, and after each interview is a Be Like, which is just an action step or a challenge that will help you be like the best. I also have the Be Like the Best workbook, which is just a collection of all those Be Likes with room for notes. Check it out at continuefit.com, belikethebest.com, or amazon.com. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.